Welcome back to the Fasting Project. If this is your first time, I'm really glad you're here. Over the past few episodes, we've talked about fasting, but from different angles. We've talked about history and science, metabolism, and our modern culture, and some of the misconceptions surrounding fasting. But today, I want to slow everything down because I've realized something. There are so many people who are interested in fasting but also intimidated by it. So maybe you've heard someone say that it changed their life, and maybe you've heard someone else say that it's dangerous, and maybe you've seen incredible before and after pictures, and maybe you've heard words like ketosis or autophagy or stem cells, insulin resistance or growth hormones, and you've thought, I have absolutely no idea what any of that means. If that's you, you're in exactly the right place because today isn't about convincing you to fast. It's about helping you to understand it. I want this to feel like we're sitting together at my kitchen table. We're actually downstairs in my family room. That's when I've been doing these videos. When I can find a free moment, not working or taking care of family things and recording this. I want to have a long conversation with you about one of the oldest health practices in human history. And I can only do that if you don't swipe. So stay here. I promise this is going to be so eye-opening and you're going to get a lot of information, like legitimate, true, real information, not hype, no miracle claims, no fear. We're avoiding that. We're just going for curiosity and science and asking an honest question. Why would the human body respond the way that it does when we intentionally stop eating for a period of time? Because here's something that I've come to believe. Our bodies are incredibly intelligent, far more intelligent than we often give them credit for. Every second of every day, without you even thinking about it, your heart is beating and your lungs are breathing and your kidneys are filtering, your liver detoxifies and your immune system patrols for viruses and bacteria, and your brain coordinates trillions of tiny processes that keep you alive. Trillions. Most of us never stop to appreciate the miracle that's happening inside of us every single second. We usually don't think about our bodies until something hurts, until we receive a diagnosis, or until we feel exhausted, until something no longer works the way it used to. That certainly happened to me. If you've seen my other videos, you may know my story. Almost 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was told what my future would probably look like. I was told disability was most likely. And it made me begin asking questions that I probably never would have asked otherwise, like, how does the body heal? And why do some people recover better than others? Or a good one is, can lifestyle actually change anything? Like, what role do nutrition, sleep, stress, movement, sunlight, relationships, and fasting really play? Those questions have led me to spend years reading books and listening to researchers and just studying medical literature, learning from physicians and nutrition scientists and anthropologists and historians. And I was motivated to go back to school and to get further certifications. And here's what I've discovered. The more I learn, the more amazed, honestly, that I become. And it's not because the human body is fragile, but because it's remarkably adaptable. It's consistently, like, yeah, consistently is a good word, or constantly adjusting. Consistently, constantly, take your pick, but it is constantly trying to protect you. Your body wakes up every morning with one goal: keep you alive, keep you functioning, keep you moving toward tomorrow. It is always working for you. And sometimes, despite the choices we make, it does keep working for us. All right, so I have to acknowledge this little guy. This is one of the newest members of our family. This is Bel Air. I just got him as an anniversary gift from my husband a couple weeks ago. He's a Maltese and he's only 12 weeks old. He weighs 2 pounds. He's super cute, but super needy in a good way. Uh, Bel Air, he has been asleep most of the time. He was in his little case. Like he's got this cute little bag thing, just sleeping. And he doesn't feel guilty about it. Like he had no, like, should I be awake and helping? No. He wasn't feeling guilty about his nap. And he also doesn't snack because he's bored. Like I feel like he's too small. Here, I'll show you. Look how small he is. He's only 2 pounds and he's fine. He's healthy. He's growing. But he won't snack just because he's bored. He doesn't eat because he saw a commercial that told him it's lunchtime. He doesn't. He's he's not getting anxious that he'll miss his next meal, so he's got to eat it all now. Like he just isn't that way. Maybe some puppies are, but he has no competition for his food, so he's not. He plays hard, he rests really pretty deeply, and he eats when it's time if I stay and sit with him. And then he goes right back to exploring the world around him. It's kind of hard to keep him focused. But watching him has reminded me how much of life is built around rhythms, like the sun rising and the sun setting and the seasons changing. Our heartbeat, like I mentioned, and our breathing in and out, even sleep comes in cycles. Creation itself seems to move in rhythms. And maybe it shouldn't surprise us that eating was really designed to follow rhythms too. Somewhere along the way, though, our relationship with food changed. And for most of human history, people didn't have refrigerators. There were no drive-throughs or vending machines, no grocery stores open 24 hours a day. Could you imagine? No. Food required work, and often it required patience. It required waiting, and sometimes there just simply wasn't any available. Periods without food weren't unusual. They were simply part of life. Our ancestors did not call it intermittent fasting. They did not have a label for it. They called it a normal day. The human body didn't evolve expecting food every 2 or 3 hours. It evolved expecting periods of abundance and periods of scarcity. That's an important idea we need to recognize because it means your body isn't confused by fasting. It recognizes it. In many ways, fasting isn't introducing something strange to the body. It's reintroducing something very biologically familiar. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something very clear. Fasting is not starvation. Those two things are often confused, but they're not the same. Starvation happens when food is unavailable and the body has no choice. Fasting is voluntary. Intentional periods of not eating, voluntary. Intentional. The difference matters. One is chosen, the other is not. One has an expected end, the other may not. And that distinction changes what fasting creates for your body and mind and soul. I also want to say something that I think is incredibly important. Food is not the enemy. I love food. Food nourishes us. Food brings families together. Food is part of celebration and culture, and food is one of God's greatest gifts. The goal of fasting isn't to avoid food. The goal is to appreciate it more, to restore a healthier relationship with it, to create intentional periods where your body can shift its attention from constantly processing incoming nutrition to carrying out some other important things that it needs to do. So think about this for just a moment. Your digestive system is one of the busiest systems in the entire body. Every meal has an incredibly complex process. Your stomach turns, your pancreas releases some digestive enzymes, and your gallbladder contracts. Then your liver processes the nutrients, hormones rise and fall, and your intestines absorb the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids, the fats, carbohydrates, and the water. And every bite sets thousands of biological processes into motion. It's amazing. But it's also work. Imagine running a factory 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years. Eventually, you might benefit from a maintenance window, like a little bit of a break, not because the factory is broken, but because maintenance is easier when new shipments aren't constantly arriving. It's one of the simplest ways I've come to think about fasting. It's not shutting the factory down, it's just creating an opportunity for maintenance. It makes me think of my husband who owns and runs and has worked for many years for a moving company. And if they never emptied their trucks and shut it down to allow it to rest and sit empty, they then wouldn't be able to fill it back up and make movement happen again. You have to have moments where you empty the space and give the functioning engine a moment to rest. So today, here's the question I want us to answer together. When you stop eating, what is your body finally able to do that it has been waiting to do, right? Because we talk about shutting down to allow an engine to rest. What are we actually trying to allow the body to do? That's what we're going to talk about. And that's where our journey begins today. I know we're already 12 minutes in and what we've talked about is good, but now we're really going to get deep into what's actually happening inside your body when you stop eating. So let's begin at the beginning. Let's imagine you've just finished dinner. Not a huge feast, just a normal, nourishing meal. Maybe you've had some protein, healthy fats, vegetables, fruit, maybe some rice or potatoes or sourdough bread. Whatever your meal looked like, something incredible immediately begins happening inside your body. Within minutes, your digestive system begins to work. Your stomach begins breaking down food mechanically and chemically. Digestive enzymes begin their jobs. Your pancreas releases enzymes to help digest proteins, fats, and carbs. And your liver begins sorting through the nutrients. Your gallbladder helps to emulsify fats, and your small intestine starts absorbing vitamins, minerals, amino acids, glucose, and fatty acids. And thousands upon thousands of microscopic processes begin working together in a perfect coordination. Most of us don't even think about it. We're already clearing the dishes, driving home from the restaurant, or watching TV, or getting the kids ready for bed. Meanwhile, your body is conducting one of the most sophisticated biochemical operations on Earth. One thing I hope this episode does is leave you with a greater appreciation for your body. We spend so much time criticizing our body. We criticize our weight, we want to lose or we want to gain, or our wrinkles, or our stretch marks, or the number on the scale, or the gray hairs. They do come. Oh, I wish I could say this is all natural, but honestly, I've got the gray hairs. It's real. Like the symptoms are real. The issues we deal with are real and more serious than just gray hair. But very rarely do we stop and say thank you to our body. Thank you for everything you've been doing for me while I wasn't even paying attention. After a meal, one hormone becomes especially important: insulin. You know insulin, most likely. Insulin often gets talked about as if it's a bad thing, and it isn't. Insulin is absolutely essential for life. Without it, we wouldn't survive. Its job is beautifully simple. When glucose from your meal begins entering into your bloodstream, insulin acts like a messenger. It tells your cells, food has arrived, open the doors, let's bring the energy inside. And your muscles begin storing glucose. Your liver stores glucose, and your cells begin using that energy immediately. Some is stored for later, and some is burned right away. It's really an elegant system. And I think insulin has received an unfair reputation over the past several years. The problem isn't that insulin exists. The problem is that for many of us, it never really gets a chance to rest. Think about modern life. A flavored coffee on the way to work, or a smoothie because you are trying to be healthy and you're not doing coffee. Then you have a muffin at the office and then a handful of candy. And then for lunch, you have a soda and a snack. And then for dinner, you've got something and then dessert. And then gonna do a movie night. You got to have some popcorn. And you know what? That popcorn actually made you a little bit more hungry. And so then you want to have something else right before you go to bed. And then we wake up and we do it all again. And for some people, this pattern has been happening for years, for decades. Every time we eat, insulin rises again and again and again. And remember, it's not because insulin is bad, but because it's exactly what it's supposed to do. Every time we eat, the body has to respond with insulin. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, I'm not saying everyone has to eat once a day. I'm not saying everyone should practice intermittent fasting. Nutrition is incredibly individual. Some people have medical conditions, some people are pregnant, some are breastfeeding, some are growing children, like teenagers. Some take medications that require food. This isn't one eating schedule that's right for everyone. But what I am saying is this. Many researchers have become interested in what happens when insulin finally has a chance to spend more time at lower levels because something fascinating begins to happen. For the first several hours after you finish eating, your body is primarily running on the food you just consumed. That's exactly what it should do. Why would it tap into stored energy when fresh energy is readily available? That would make no sense. Think about your home during a snowstorm. If you have a full stack of firewood sitting on your front porch, you're going to burn that first. You're not going to start tearing apart the furniture. Your body thinks the same way. Fresh fuel comes first. Stored fuel comes later. And as several hours pass, something begins to change. The glucose from your last meal starts becoming less available, and insulin begins gradually calming back down. Another hormone begins becoming more active, glucagon. Most people have heard of insulin. Very few have heard of glucagon because these two hormones work together beautifully. If insulin is the hormone that says store energy, glucagon says this this means we need to begin using what's already stored. One fills the pantry, the other opens it. One stores, one releases. Your body constantly is trying to balance the two. And one of the greatest lies that we've been told is that if we don't eat every couple of hours, our bodies immediately go into starvation mode. I remember being told this. I remember believing this when I was in my 20s. Like, I even had a timer. Like, I would not go more than 2 hours because I was so afraid that it simply isn't how human physiology works. Think about it. If that were true, our species never would have survived. There were no grocery stores for most of human history, no refrigerators, no protein bars, no convenience stores. If missing one meal caused catastrophic damage, humanity would have disappeared long before recorded history even had a chance to exist. And instead, the human body developed incredibly sophisticated ways to bridge that gap between meals. One of those ways is glycogen. If you've never heard that word before, don't let it intimidate you. It's actually pretty simple. Glycogen is stored glucose. Think of it like your body's savings account. When you eat more glucose than you immediately need, some of it gets tucked away for later, primarily inside your liver and your muscles, and it's not forever. It's just until it's needed. So when you stop eating for several hours, your body doesn't panic. It simply says, let's use some of what we already saved. That's what glycogen is for. Isn't it beautiful? Your body planned ahead. And before you even realized you might need energy later, your body quietly prepared for it. How many things like that is your body doing right now? How many quiet acts of protection are happening beneath the surface just while you're watching this video? I think that's worth stopping to appreciate. For many healthy adults, somewhere around 12 to 24 hours without food, although this varies considerably based on recent meals and physical activity, liver glycogen stores, and overall metabolic health, and just individual biology. But those glycogen stores begin becoming more depleted. Again, this isn't an emergency. This is expected. This is part of the design. Now, the body begins asking a different question. If fresh fuel is becoming limited and stored glucose is running lower, where should we get energy next? And the answer is one of the greatest survival adaptations ever built into the human body: body fat. For years, maybe decades, body fat has been portrayed as the villain, but that's not really fair. Body fat isn't the enemy. Healthy amounts of body fat are essential. We need it. It's involved in hormone production, temperature regulation, protecting organs, providing stored energy. The problem isn't that our bodies can store fat. The problem is that many of us rarely create opportunities to use those energy stores. Imagine owning a beautiful savings account that you never once withdrew from. You just kept making deposits day after day, year after year. Eventually, that account would become larger and larger, not because saving money is bad, but because withdrawals never happened. Fat works in much the same way. It is stored energy. It's not a mistake. It isn't a design flaw. It's one of the ways your body has protected human life for thousands upon thousands of years. When insulin remains lower for longer periods, the body gradually becomes more willing to access those stored energy reserves. Fat begins to be broken down into fatty acids, and the liver then begins converting some of those fatty acids into molecules called ketones. Now, don't swipe away. Don't let the word scare you. Ketones are simply another fuel. That's it. Your brain can use them. Your heart can use them. Your muscles can use them. Many tissues throughout the entire body can use them. Your body isn't failing, it's adapting. Think about it. The human body was designed with backup fuel, not because something went wrong, but because something went incredibly right. God, or if you're looking at this strictly through biology, evolution over countless generations, I believe it was God, designed a body that can transition between fuel sources when circumstances change. That's remarkable. It means your body is far more resilient than we've often been led to believe. Researchers sometimes call this metabolic flexibility, and I love that phrase because that's exactly what it describes. A body that can comfortably use the fuel that's available. It's like a hybrid vehicle that can use gas and electric and switch between. Our bodies do that too. Sometimes glucose, sometimes stored fat, sometimes a combination of both. Instead of being locked into only one source of energy, it's able to adapt. And adaptability is one of the hallmarks of health. As I was preparing this episode, I kept coming back to one thought. Maybe fasting isn't teaching our bodies something new. Maybe it's reminding our bodies of something they were designed to do all along. So now that we've reached one of the most talked about parts of fasting, if you've spent any amount of time reading articles, watching YouTube videos, or listening to podcasts about fasting, you've almost certainly heard one word over and over again: autophagy. Some people talk about it as if it's magic, others dismiss it completely. So let's just slow down for a minute and talk about what scientists actually mean when they use that word. Let me get a drink real quick. All right. Autophagy literally means self-eating. Now, I know that sounds terrible. And if that was the only explanation someone gave you, why would anyone ever want that? But the name is actually a little bit misleading. Your body isn't randomly eating itself, it's recycling, cleaning, repairing. Think about your garage. Over time, things naturally collect, like broken tools or old boxes or rusty nails. We have a little fridge in our garage where we keep a lot of our bottled or canned drinks. And so then when the bigger box gets in the trash, I say this because even this morning I saw it. I was like, why are there four empty boxes? It just kind of happens, doesn't it? Or broken tools. They maybe you might use it, but then it gets replaced, but then not thrown out. Things you thought you might need someday. Eventually, it becomes harder to find what's actually useful because clutter has accumulated. And then one Saturday, you finally decide to clean it out. You throw away what's broken, or you organize what is valuable and you recycle what can still be used. But when you're finished, the garage works so much better. It isn't because you bought a new garage, it's because you took care of the one you already had. It's one of the ways researchers describe autophagy. It's one of the body's natural housekeeping processes. Cells are constantly producing proteins and constantly building and constantly repairing. Over time, some proteins become damaged and some cellular components do wear out. And mitochondria, those little tiny structures that help produce energy inside of our cells, they can become less efficient. Autophagy is one of several systems that the body uses to identify worn out or damaged cellular material and then break it down and recycle many of its building blocks. Now, this process is happening all the time. It isn't something fasting invents. Fasting appears to influence some of the signaling pathways involved in this normal cellular maintenance. And that's one reason scientists have become so interested in studying it. Now, I want to be careful here because this is where the internet sometimes gets ahead of the evidence. You'll hear people say things like, fast for 24 hours and your body completely cleans itself out. Or autophagy starts exactly at 16 hours. The truth is, we don't know that. There isn't a magic clock. Most of the detailed research on autophagy has been done in laboratory models and animals because directly measuring it throughout the human body is honestly, it's extremely difficult. Human studies suggest fasting influences many of the biological pathways associated with autophagy, but researchers are still working to really understand exactly how much, where, and in what conditions. And that doesn't make the research weak. It makes it honest. Science is often less about having all the answers than it is about just asking better questions. Personally, I find that encouraging because it reminds me that we don't have to exaggerate fasting to appreciate it. The body is already extraordinary. We don't need to invent miracles. Reality is fascinating enough. So let's talk about another incredible adaptation: inflammation. Inflammation has almost become a bad word. I need to reduce inflammation. Inflammation causes disease. Everything is inflammation, but inflammation itself isn't bad. It's necessary. If you cut your finger while you're making dinner, inflammation is one of the first responses that begins protecting that wound. Immune cells rush to the area and blood flow increases so repair can begin. Without inflammation, healing wouldn't happen. The problem isn't inflammation. The problem is when the inflammatory response becomes chronically elevated or poorly regulated over long periods of time. And this is one reason that fasting has become such an active area of research. Scientists have been studying how fasting may influence inflammatory signaling throughout the body. And some human studies have shown that reductions in certain inflammatory markers after structured fasting interventions, particularly in people with obesity or metabolic disease. Like they have shown reductions in these markers, and other studies have shown mixed results depending on what type of fasting, the length of the fast, or the participants themselves, and what researchers were measuring. So that's important to recognize. Science almost never gives one simple answer. Human beings are wonderfully complex. And one thing that becomes clear as you read the research is that fasting doesn't appear to work through just one pathway. It's influencing hormones, energy metabolism, and cell signaling, like the nervous system, the immune system, the gut, sleep, or circadian rhythms. It's affecting many systems all at the same time. And because all of those systems communicate with one another, scientists are trying to understand how these changes interact. And that's one of the reasons fasting has generated so much excitement and research over the last couple of decades. So let's talk about the immune system for a moment, because obviously this area fascinates me. Your immune system is unbelievably busy. Every single day, it's identifying viruses, bacteria, fungi, abnormal cells, environmental toxins and damaged tissue, and it's constantly making decisions like attack this, ignore that, repair over here, or stand over there. Most of us never even notice. But researchers have asked a fascinating question. How does temporary fasting influence the immune system? And some studies suggest that periods of fasting may alter how certain immune cells behave, can change inflammatory signaling, and influence the way the body recycles older immune cells before producing new ones during refeeding. Now, much of this work is still developing, and the exact clinical significance continues to be studied. That's very different from saying fasting resets everyone's immune system. The phrase immune reset is popular online, but the science is more nuanced. Some early research is certainly intriguing. It really is. Researchers are actively exploring these mechanisms, but there is still much we don't know. And I think that is exciting enough to simply say scientists are paying attention. Doctors and nutritionists are really exploring this. One thing I appreciate about good researchers is their humility. The best scientists rarely say, "We've solved it." No. Instead, they say, "Here's what we observed. Here's what we think may be happening. Here's what still needs to be studied." And I love that attitude because I think it's the same attitude we should have toward our own health. Curiosity instead of certainty, learning instead of defending. Now let's talk about something almost everyone watching this video has probably experienced: digestion. Have you ever finished Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or gone out to eat at your favorite buffet and you just ate way more than you needed? And afterward, all you wanted to do was lie down? There's a reason for that. Digestion requires energy, a lot of it. Your stomach doesn't digest food just by magic. It contracts, it secretes acid. Your pancreas produces the enzymes, the liver processes nutrients, and your intestines absorb and transport those nutrients throughout the body. Meal after meal, day after day, year after year. And when you intentionally stop eating for a period of time, your digestive system isn't shutting down. It's simply less occupied with processing incoming food. And that doesn't mean digestion is bad. Far from it. Digestion is one of the greatest miracles of biology. But just as muscles recover after exercise, many researchers are exploring what periods of digestive rest may mean for gut function, the microbiome, and overall metabolic health. Some findings are really promising. Others are still emerging, and it's another reminder that the body often benefits from healthy rhythms of activity and recovery. Now, one of the themes you'll keep hearing throughout this entire series is this: health rarely comes from extremes, it comes from rhythms. We breathe in, then we breathe out, our heart contracts, then relax, we sleep, then we wake, we feast, then we fast, then we move, then we recover, we have work, and we have Sabbath. These rhythms are woven into nearly every living system. Maybe fasting isn't asking the body to do something unnatural. Maybe it's inviting the body back into a rhythm it has always known. As I sit here with Beller sleeping beside me, I'm reminded of something simple. He doesn't spend all day eating. He doesn't spend all day running. He doesn't spend all day sleeping either. He naturally moves between activity, nourishment, exploration, and rest without a calendar, without a fitness tracker, without someone reminding him other than me. It's simply the rhythm he was created to live. And maybe that's one of the quiet lessons creation has been trying to teach us all along. And that brings us to a question that many people have wondered for years. If fasting changes so many processes inside the body, why are scientists studying it in connection with so many different health conditions? Like, why why are they? What are they finding? So that's exactly where we're going to go next. Um, One of the questions I hear often: if fasting changes all of these things inside the body, why is it being studied, and in what ways? And what are scientists really finding in regards to fasting and different diseases? And I think the answer actually tells us something much bigger than just fasting itself. Because the answer isn't fasting is a cure for everything. It isn't. The answer is much more fascinating. As we've been talking throughout this episode about that your body isn't made up of separate components or compartments that never communicate with one another. It is. It's your brain talks to your immune system. Your gut communicates with your brain, and your hormones influence your metabolism, and your metabolism influences inflammation, and sleep affects hormones, and stress affects your digestion. Your liver talks to your muscles, and your muscles release signaling molecules that affect the rest of your body. Everything is connected. It's more like a symphony than a collection of independent instruments. When one section changes, the other responds. So, when scientists study fasting, they're not asking, does fasting cure disease? They're asking something much more thoughtful. If fasting changes metabolism, if it changes insulin, if it changes energy use, if it changes inflammatory signaling and hormone levels, could those changes influence diseases that involve those same biological systems? And that's a different question. And it's exactly the kind of question science is designed to ask. Let's start with probably the strongest area of evidence: weight. This might surprise some people. Fasting absolutely can help people lose weight. Many well-designed human studies have shown that. But here's the interesting part. The newest large reviews comparing intermittent fasting with traditional calorie reduction have found that fasting generally works about as well as other approaches, not dramatically better. Most people do lose weight with fasting, but fasting isn't necessarily superior to conventional calorie restriction when total calorie intake is similar. Now, before you think that's disappointing, I actually find it encouraging, because maybe the real question isn't, is fasting better than every other diet? Maybe the better question is, can fasting become a sustainable rhythm that some people genuinely enjoy? Because if someone enjoys it, if it fits their lifestyle, if they can stick with it, that matters. The best nutritional plan isn't the one that's perfect on paper, it's the one that you can realistically live with. Weight, however, is only one piece of the story. What really captured researchers' attention was what seemed to be happening beneath the surface. Let's talk about insulin resistance. Imagine someone knocks on your front door. The first time, you answer immediately. The 10th time, still no problem. But imagine someone knocks on your door every 2 minutes, day after day, month after month. Eventually, you may stop responding as quickly. Our cells can behave in a somewhat similar way. When insulin has to knock on the cellular door over and over again, some cells gradually become less responsive. And that's one way scientists describe insulin resistance. The pancreas often compensates by producing even more insulin to achieve the same result. And over time, this can contribute to metabolic dysfunction in susceptible individuals. Now, one reason that fasting has become so interesting is because periods without food naturally reduce the need for insulin release. Researchers have consistently observed improvements in insulin sensitivity and fasting insulin in many people who lose weight through structured fasting programs, especially those with overweight, obesity, or prediabetes. But these improvements often occur alongside weight loss itself, making it difficult to separate the effects of fasting from the effects of losing body fat. And that's important. Good science doesn't oversimplify. It acknowledges when multiple things are happening at the same time. So let's move to the liver. Your liver is one of the hardest working organs in your body. It filters, stores nutrients, it produces important proteins, it processes medications, it helps to regulate blood sugar and supports digestion, it detoxifies countless compounds, and it works every moment of every day. So, in recent years, researchers have become incredibly interested in a condition now called metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver disease, or MASLD. You may have heard it called fatty liver disease, which is honestly the only thing I've referred to it as. This condition has become incredibly common around the world. Because it is so closely tied to metabolism, researchers naturally wanted to know whether fasting patterns could help improve it. Special reviews suggest that intermittent fasting can improve liver fat, liver enzymes, body weight, and markers of metabolic health in many individuals with fatty liver disease. Now, at the same time, much of the benefit appears comparable to other approaches that achieve similar weight loss and improve nutrition. Again, this lesson isn't that fasting is magical. The lesson is that the liver seems to respond favorably when overall metabolic health improves. Now, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about inflammation and autoimmune disease. This part is especially meaningful to me, as many of you know. Like I mentioned earlier, I live with multiple sclerosis, and that diagnosis changed my life. It also changed the questions I began asking. One thing I want to say very clearly is this. I am not telling anyone that fasting cures autoimmune disease. That evidence simply does not support making the claim that it does. If someone tells you fasting cures every autoimmune disease, they're saying more than the science currently allows. And I think we can be excited about fasting without overstating it. So, what are scientists actually studying and what are they really saying? If you want to find out, go to the next episode of this series and we're going to dive deep into what, like I said, scientists are really studying and what they're really asking and what they've really found. I'll see you in the next one.